The wind howled across the dry surface of Idenfor, a forgotten mining planet on the edge of the galaxy. Dust storms were common here, and they came fast, loud, angry, and full of static charge. On this evening, one such storm rolled across the horizon like a wall of sand and lightning. Galen Thorne, a quiet mechanic in his mid-30s, stood outside his small workshop near the edge of the colony. His clothes were worn, his boots covered in red dust, and his eyes were tired but sharp. He had lived here alone for almost 3 years, fixing machines, salvaging parts, and staying out of trouble. As the storm came closer, Galen spotted something unusual through the blowing sand. A flashing red light. He squinted and stepped forward. Through the dust, he could see the broken shape of a small craft, half buried in the sand about 100 meters from his station. Another crash, he muttered to himself. Great. Grabbing his jacket and mask, Galen made his way toward the wreck. The ship was sleek, unlike the usual mining drones or cargo haulers. It looked expensive, maybe even royal. Its side was scorched from the crash, and the engines were dead. The hatch was halfway open, sparks flying from inside. "Hello," he called out. No answer. He climbed inside carefully. The cockpit was dark, and smoke filled the air. Then he saw an alien woman slumped in the co-pilot seat, her head resting against the side wall. Her breathing was shallow, and a long cut ran down her left arm. She wore a dusty gray travel suit, but there was no symbol or ID on it. Galen quickly checked her pulse. Still alive. He lifted her carefully and carried her back through the storm, shielding her with his jacket. It took time, but he made it to his station just as the storm hit full force, shaking the walls and covering the crash site in dust. Inside, he laid her on the old couch and patched up her arm, cleaned the wound, used a med patch from his kit, and gave her some water. She didn't wake up right away, but her breathing improved. He sat down nearby, rubbing the dust off his hands. "Who crashes a ship like that and doesn't even carry ID?" he said softly. "And why are you flying alone out here?" The woman woke up hours later, during the night. Her eyes opened slowly, scanning the room. She looked confused, tense like someone who didn't expect to be rescued. "Easy," he said, getting her some warm broth. "This place isn't much, but the walls are strong, and the food's hot." Raya looked around. The workshop was small, full of tools, broken ship parts, and a simple sleeping area. It was clearly a one-man station. No tech guards. No luxuries. "Live here alone?" she asked. "Yeah, peaceful out here. People mostly leave you alone. I like it that way." She nodded slowly. "I see." Galen gave her space. He didn't press her with questions. You could tell she wasn't ready to talk. She seemed alert, intelligent, and something else. Her hands were soft, her movements careful, like someone who wasn't used to this kind of place. Still, he didn't ask. It wasn't his business. The next morning, after the storm passed, Galen went back to the crash site. The ship was buried halfway in the sand, but the core was intact. He pulled out a few pieces for repair and checked the beacon it had short-circuited. He took it apart and brought it back to the shop. Meanwhile, Raya had already cleaned herself up and was walking around the station. She looked at the shelves full of ship parts, the old hover bike he was fixing. The way everything was organized with care. "You fix all this yourself?" she asked. "Yeah, been fixing machines since I was a kid." She seemed impressed. "Good, thanks. Want to help?" She paused. "I don't know much about tools, but then it's a good day to learn." And just like that, the richest woman in the galaxy, though Galen had no idea, picked up a small wrench and began her first lesson in basic mechanics. Outside, stars returned above the red sky of Iden. For the storm was gone, but something else had started to stir. A quiet story of two strangers from two very different worlds, brought together by fate. The days passed slowly on Idenfor. The sky was always red, the air dry, and the ground full of dust. But inside Galen's small workshop, things started to feel different. The woman he rescued, Raya, was recovering quickly. She still moved carefully, but her strength was returning. She had stayed silent about her past. Galen never asked. He had lived long enough to know that sometimes People needed time before they could talk. Raya spent her mornings helping him with simple repairs. At first, she struggled, dropping tools, mixing up wires, but Galen was patient. He showed her how to fix basic power cells, how to clean circuits, and how to weld small parts without burning herself. "You learn fast," he told her one afternoon. She smiled faintly. "I've never done anything like this before." It gave her a curious look. "What did you do before you ended up here?" Raya paused, her eyes distant. "I traveled, attended meetings, learned about trade and politics." "Sounds like someone important," Galen said, half joking. She looked down. "Not anymore." Galen didn't push. He just handed her another tool. The people in town Eden 4 wasn't completely empty. A few kilometers away was a rough little outpost called Cinder Point, where miners and traders passed through. Galen went there twice a month for supplies and repairs. He didn't like the place. It was loud, full of trouble, and run by a gang known as the Red Iron Claws. One morning, Galen told Raya he needed to make a supply run. "I'll come with you," she offered. He hesitated. "You sure?" to Towns. "Not exactly friendly. I can handle it," she said, standing straighter. When they arrived in Cinder Point, Raya walked beside him quietly. She wore one of Galen's spare jackets and kept her head low. Still she stood out. Her posture, her calm confidence. Even the way she looked at the dusty buildings, it was different. She didn't belong here, and people noticed. They stopped. At a supply shop, where Galen traded some old machine parts. The owner, an older woman named Mira, gave him a curious look. "Who's your friend?" "A traveler," Galen replied simply. Mira glanced at Raya. "She doesn't look like the usual crowd." "She's not," Galen said. "Trouble finds her after gathering supplies." Galen and Raya stopped at a food stall near the edge of town. While Galen paid for the food, a group of Red Iron Claws gang members walked by. One of them, Crawl, a tall man with a scar over his right eye, stared at Raya too long. "She looks expensive," he said with a smirk. "What's someone like her doing with Scrapman Thorn?" Galen stayed calm. "Keep walking, Crawl." Crawl stepped closer. "Easy now. I'm just saying she doesn't belong with your kind. Maybe she'd like a better offer." Before Galen could speak, Raya stepped forward. "I'm not interested," she said coldly. Her voice was steady, powerful, and full of command. Crawl blinked, surprised. There was something in her tone, something that made even a man like him pause. But Crawl wasn't T-smart. He reached out toward her arm. In a flash, Galen moved between them. With one smooth motion, he grabbed Crawl's wrist, twisted it, and pushed him back. "I said, walk away," Crawl growled, but his friends pulled him back. "Next time, Thorn," Crawl muttered as they left. Galen turned to Raya. "You all right?" "Yes," she said softly. "Thank you." They finished the rest of their visit quickly and left town. Back at the workshop later that night, as they sat by the small heater in the workshop, Raya finally spoke more. "You didn't have to step in like that." "Of course I did," Galen replied. "You were in danger?" She looked at him closely. "You didn't ask who I am?" "Not even once." Galen leaned back. "I figure you'll tell me if you want to. Doesn't matter to me. You needed help, and I was there. That's all." Raya stared at the fire. Her hands rested in her lap, and for a moment, she looked unsure. "Most people treat me like a symbol," she said quietly, "not as a person. They act differently the moment they know my name." Galen chuckled. "Out here, names don't mean much. Actions do." Whispers in the dust at the edge of the nearby outpost, Cinder Point word was spreading. Crawl, the Red Iron Claws enforcer. Galen had pushed away, hadn't forgotten the embarrassment. He now sat in a smoky back room with Vex, the local boss of the gang. "She didn't look normal," Crawl said, rubbing his bruised wrist. "To clean, to calm, and that accent fancy." Vex leaned back in his chair.
"Are you?"
"Think she's someone important?" "I'd bet credits on it," Crawl replied. "She's hiding with Galen Thorn." Vex narrowed his eyes. Galen was known to be quiet, skilled, and not someone who caused trouble. But if he was hiding someone valuable, find out, Morvex ordered. She's worth something, we'll collect. A quiet day turns dark back at the workshop. Galen and Raya shared a quiet lunch. They had just finished cleaning the outer panels of a mining bot when a message pinged on Galen's old CUM device. It was Mira, the shopkeeper from town. Her voice was low and tense. Galen, I heard something. Red Iron Claws are asking around about you and your visitor. Thought you should know. Galen's face hardened. Thanks, Mira. He looked at Raya, who had gone still. They know, she said. Looks like it, he replied. Raya stood and walked to the window. She didn't look scared, she looked focused. They'll come soon. They won't be polite. We get ready, Galen said. Preparing for trouble, Galen didn't have weapons like a soldier, but he had tools. He set up shock traps near the outer gate, locked down the hover bay doors, and secured the workshop's power lines. Raya helped without asking. She understood more than he expected how to reroute systems, how to move quietly, how to handle risk. At one point, she stopped and looked at him. You're calm, she said. I've seen worse, Galen replied simply. You were a soldier once, a long time ago. Now I just fix broken things. Raya paused. Not everything that's broken is useless. He looked at her. Either are the people who fix them. Their eyes met for a moment, quiet understanding passing between them. The Red Iron Claws arrived just before sunset. A dust cloud rose on the horizon. For dark bikes and a small scout truck approached from the west. Galen saw them from the roof. They're here. He went down and stood at the locked front gate. The bike stopped, just outside, engines growling. Crawl stepped forward with a smug grin. Evening, Thorn. We just came to talk. I'm not interested, Galen said. Crawl glanced at the workshop. We heard you've been hiding someone. Important someone. Thought maybe you'd want to share. Galen crossed his arms. She's under my protection. Not a smart answer, Crawl warned. Galen pressed a small button on his wrist. A hidden shock panel lit up under one of the bike's crack. The rider fell off, shouting in surprise. I warned you, Galen said. The gang members pulled out weapons, but before they could aim, a flash grenade rolled out from behind the gate. Galen ducked. The blast lit the sky and blinded them for a few seconds. Raya, standing from the rooftop with a salvage pulse blaster, fired into the air. Leave. Now, or the next one isn't just noise. The gang, confused and half-blind, fell back. Crawl growled. This isn't over, Galen shouted. Tell your boss, she's not for sale. And just like that, the Red Iron Claws sped away into the night. After the fight later, as the stars filled the sky, Galen and Raya sat on the rooftop, watching. The wind blowed dust across the ground. You didn't have to fight for me, she said quietly. I didn't fight for you, Galen replied. I fought for what's right. She looked at him. Still don't know who I am, do you? Galen shook his head. And honestly, I don't care. Raya smiled, a real deep smile. That's why I stayed. Trouble had comin'. Gone, but more would follow. Yet tonight, in a small, quiet workshop on a forgotten planet, two people from different lives had found something stronger than fear-trust, and the galaxy, large and full of power, had no idea what had just begun. The stars above Iden shimmered like cold silver coins. The wind had calmed, and the dust storms had moved farther east. But inside Galen's workshop, the air felt tense. Raya stood near the workbench, watching Galen tighten the security doors. You think they'll come back soon? Always do, Galen replied without looking up. People like that don't give up easy, especially when they smell credits. Raya nodded. She knew he was right. The Red Iron Claws weren't the type to walk away. They had seen something in her, something they didn't understand but wanted to own, and now Galen was caught in it. A broken signal later that night. While Galen worked on a damaged circuit board from Raya's crashed ship, he noticed a blinking light on the side of the panel. It was small, almost invisible, buried behind layers of wires. Huh, he said. What's this? He gently tapped it. A low hum started. Raya looked over, her eyes wide. Hey, Don't too late. A soft blue light blinked twice, then disappeared. Raya's face changed. Her calm expression turned into worry. What was that? Galen asked. The ship landed quietly in the empty field behind the workshop. 2 guards in dark blue armor stepped out first. They scanned the area with calm precision. Then a 3rd figure stepped forward, taller in a long black coat with gold trim. Raya walked past Galen toward them. The guards bowed. Lady Rayazel, the tall one said. We're here to take you home. Galen froze. Lady, the truth comes. Outriazel turned to Galen. Her face was serious, but soft. My real name is Rayazel Cytherian, daughter of the House of Cytherian Prime, she said. I'm the heir to a family that controls half the galaxy's trade networks. Galen blinked. You were, what, one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in the galaxy, she said. I came to this system to inspect a mining deal in secret. I didn't want guards or attention. I just wanted to see the world myself. But my ship was sabotaged. Galen stared at her, then at the ship, the guards, the polished armor. It all made sense now. Her perfect speech, her elegant posture, the way she handled pressure without panic. You're royalty, he said slowly. Razel looked away. I didn't mean to lie, just wanted to be treated like a normal person. For once, the Aphraesel's guards stood at a distance while she spoke to Galen alone. You saved my life, she said. You protected me without knowing who I was. You fought for me. You never asked for anything. I didn't need to, Galen replied. I owe you more than I can say, she continued. Come with me. I can offer you a place in my house, work in my fleet, wealth, protection. But Galen shook his head. I'm not meant for palaces and politics, he said. I like fixing things, helping people. I don't need riches. I just wanted to help someone who needed it. Razel looked at him with quiet respect. Not many would say no. Maybe not, Galen replied, but I don't need to be someone else. Goodbye. Razel sighed and looked toward her ship. Her people were waiting. I have to go, she said. My absence has already caused problems, I figured. She reached into her pocket and handed him a small metal disc. This is a contact chip. It will reach me directly. No gates. No passwords. If you ever need anything, just call. Galen took it quietly. Then, without another word, she stepped toward the ship. The engines lit up, dust rising around her as the ramp closed behind her. The ship lifted gently into the sky, becoming a silver in the rising sun. And just like that, she was gone. Alone again, Galen stood in the silence for a long time. The wind picked up again, blowing across the empty field. He turned and walked back into the workshop. He looked around at the tools, the wires, the machine parts, and at the small disc in his hand. He placed it carefully inside a drawer, closed it, and went back to work. Outside the red skies of Iden 4 stretched wide and quiet, but Galen knew something had changed. He had helped someone who could shape empires, and she had left behind more than just a memory. She had left behind something human. After Rajazel's ship vanished into the sky, silence returned to Iden 4. Galen sat alone at his workbench, his hands resting on a half-repaired power tool. But his thoughts were far away. The seat across from him where she used to sit was now empty. Her voice, her calm focus, her questions were gone. I'm here on behalf of Lady Rayazel Cytherian, the pilot said. She asked me to deliver this. He handed Galen a sleek black case and a message disc. Galen opened the disc first. Raja's image appeared calm, clear and formal, yet somehow still personal. Galen, her voice said gently, I know you didn't want a reward, but I can't leave things like this. You saved me. You protected me. You gave me your time when I was nothing but a stranger. So I've left you something useful. No strings, no obligations. Just to thank you. The message faded. Galen opened the case. Inside was a silver ownership chip, registered under his name. It showed full title to a state-of-the-art workshop, already built at the edge of the Iden 4 colony. It came with solar panels, fusion-powered tools, an AI assistant, and docking space for 2 mid-class ships. Alongside it were 3 access keys to protected star routes, worth thousands in trade credits. At the bottom of the case was a smaller box holding a bracelet. On the inside was a short message engraved in fine letters, "For the man who helped me not because of my name, but because of his heart." No strings attached. Galen stared at the contents for a long time. Then he looked at the pilot. "She said, 'There are no strings,'" the pilot confirmed. "She wanted to make sure you could continue your work in peace. She respects your decision to stay here." Galen nodded slowly. "All right, let's see it." He traveled across the colony to the location marked on the chip. Just outside the hills, past the old mining field, sat the new building. Smooth walls, solar shielding, smart doors, and a clean landing pad, everything Galen could ever need. It was perfect, but it wasn't the luxury that impressed him. It was the thought behind it. Razel had chosen something that fit him, not something to impress him. She had listened, and that meant more to him than the tech or the credits. Back to where Galen moved in the next day. He brought his old tools, a few broken machines he still wanted to fix, and his quiet habits. The new workshop made his life easier, but he didn't change much about himself. He still worked with his hands, still drank his same strong tea, still helped travelers who stopped by with broken bikes or damaged drones. People began to talk. Some said Galen had made a deal with the Cytherian nobles. Others whispered that he had protected someone important, but no one really knew the truth, and Galen didn't explain. He just kept working. A gift returned one evening. He sat outside the workshop under the open sky. He wore the bracelet Rajazel had given him, not to show off, but because it reminded him of something important. A moment of trust, connection not based on power or money. He took out the small contact chip she had left before she departed. He hadn't used it. Not yet. He turned it over in his hand, thinking he could call her, say thank you, say something. But he didn't want to interrupt her life, not if she was busy with politics. It's business or galactic matters he couldn't even imagine. So he placed the chip back in the drawer and smiled to himself. "She knows where to find me," he whispered. Quiet. But not forgotten. Weeks passed. The red iron claws had backed off for now. Moore said the syndicate had received a warning from a royal envoy. No one messed with nobles like the Cytherians, not without consequences. Mira from the town stopped by now and then, offering gossip and trading supplies. Looked around Galen's new place with wide eyes. "You've really stepped up," she said. "Just good fortune," Galen replied. But deep down, he knew the truth. It wasn't luck. It was a result of kindness. A moment where he had helped someone not because of who she was, but because it was the right thing to do. And somewhere out there, among the stars, was a woman who hadn't forgotten that. It had been a month since Rajazel's ship disappeared into the sky. Since then, life on Iden 4 had returned to normal, or something close to it. The red dust still blew across the ground. The miners still worked under the harsh sun. And Galen Thorne, the quiet mechanic who once lived in a rundown shed, now worked in a shining new workshop just outside the colony. To others, it looked like fortune had finally smiled on him. But Galen didn't see it that way. He hadn't changed. He still got up early, still worked with old tools and broken bots. He still helped the locals when he could. The new building and fancy machines made his work easier, yes, but not more important. Then he heard something, a faint knock on the storage door behind him. He stood up quickly. Visitors were rare this far from the main path. He opened the door and found a box. No ship, no footsteps. Just a small, clean box made of polished wood with a silver crest carved on top. It's a Cytherian family crest. The second gift inside the box. Galen found 3 things. First, a letter, written in elegant, clear handwriting. It read, "Galen, I promise no strings. I meant it, but I couldn't forget. You gave me shelter without asking why. You gave me protection without expecting thanks. You gave me time without knowing who I was. And you gave me peace for the first time in a very long while. I wanted to give you something that wouldn't change you, but might still help you grow. This is not a reward. This is a gift. Raja Zel, asterisk. The second item in the box was a navigation crystal, not just any crystal, but a rare royal-coated one, capable of unlocking private travel paths between core worlds and outer territories. These routes were faster, safer, and completely protected by Cytherian law. The third item was a small data chip, containing blueprints for machines Galen had never seen before: medical drones, water filters, power systems for remote towns. They were clean, efficient, and easy to build. Tools for helping others. Galen held the chip tightly. He understood now. She hadn't just given him money. She had given him the power to build something better for the people around him. A change. In the air over the next few weeks, Galen began to build quietly. He didn't make announcements or throw parties. He just started working. The people in Cinderpoint began to notice. The old water station in town, which used to fail every few days, now ran perfectly with a new filtration system Galen installed for free. The small medical cabin that treated miners received a set of new auto-diagnostic bots. Powered by a clean energy core Galen built in his workshop, a mother whose son had a broken mobility cart found it fixed and polished on her porch one morning with a simple note, "Be well." People whispered about it. Some said Galen had made a deal with off-world nobles. Others believed he was building something greater than machines. But Galen didn't care about the rumors. He didn't want fame. He just wanted to help because someone had once trusted him without a reason, and he wanted to pass that trust forward. A silent visitor one night. After finishing repairs on an old mining drill, Galen stepped outside to watch the stars. That's when he saw it, a ship, far in the distance, moving slowly across the sky, not landing, not signaling, just passing by. But something about it felt familiar. The shape, the glow, the quiet presence. He smiled to himself. "She's watching," he whispered. The strength of kindness Galen never bragged, never told his story in full. But the people began to understand. He had helped someone once without knowing who she was, and now, through small acts, that kindness was returning to the world around him. No war, no throne. No reward needed, just a simple belief. Help others when you can. Ask for nothing. Expect nothing. The galaxy gives back in ways you never expect. Galen didn't need a medal. He had peace. And somewhere, the stars, was a woman who had everything except the one thing she found in a dusty workshop on a forgotten planet: honest kindness. The days on Iden 4 continued to pass quietly. Galen Thorne's life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. He spent his mornings working on machines, his afternoons helping people in nearby outposts, and his evenings watching the stars. Even though the workshop he now owned was full of advanced tools, he still preferred using his old wrench, his worn gloves, and his calm, thoughtful way of doing things. People respected him. They didn't ask too many questions. They just knew that if something was broken, whether a machine or a moment, Galen could fix it. But one part of him always wondered, would he ever see her again? A signal in the night one evening, as Galen sat outside watching the twin moons rise. His CUM device let out a soft beep. It was the contact chip Rajazel had given him. He hadn't touched it in weeks. He picked it up and saw a single message, requesting landing permission. Private ship, 1 passenger. Galen stared at the screen. He didn't smile right away. He simply stood, walked over to the landing pad, and turned on the guide lights. Minutes later, a ship appeared in the sky. It moved slowly, gracefully, with a familiar silver shine. It was her ship. Razel returns. The ship landed softly on the pad beside the workshop. The door opened, and a familiar figure stepped down the ramp. She stepped closer. "I hope it's all right that I came back." "Always welcome," he said. Just 2 people, they sat outside on the bench, just like old times. No guards, no ships circling overhead. No titles, just Galen and Rajel, 2 people from very different worlds. Now meeting again as equals? How's the galaxy treating you? Galen asked after a while. Rajel chuckled. Busy, complicated. But I've made changes. Oh. Stepped away from some duties. I gave others more control. I realized I don't need to lead everything. Some things are better when shared. Galen nodded. Sounds wise. I learned that from someone, she said. Glancing at him, No Crown's Hera Ryazel stood and looked out over the hills, the dusty fields glowing under the moonlight. You know, she said softly, when I left this place, I thought I could forget it, but I couldn't. Not a day passed without thinking about this station, and the man who never asked me who I was. Galen didn't reply right away. He watched her with quiet eyes. I didn't want anything from you, he finally said. Still don't? I know, she replied. That's why I came back. Not as a leader, not as someone powerful, just someone who missed being seen as a person. She turned to face him again. Can I stay for a while? Galen smiled gently. Only if you help fix the drone tomorrow. Rajazel laughed. Deal. A new routine in the days that followed. Rajazel didn't act like a guest. She worked with Galen side by side. She cleaned parts, fixed wiring, and even learned how to weld properly. People from the colony started to see her too. At first they stared, but Galen never introduced her by title only, as Raya. And that was enough. She shared meals with miners, helped rebuild a broken power grid, and even played with children in the town square. For the first time in her life, Rajazel Cytherian lived as just Ryand. She was happy. The galaxy watches of. Of course, the galaxy didn't forget her. Messages came in from time to time. Some were urgent, some requested her return. But she answered only the ones she wished to. She had learned something on Idenfor. Real power is not control. It's choice. And she had chosen this place, this quiet life, even if only for a little while. And Galen, he never asked her to stay. He never asked her to go. Simply made space beside him as he always did. A story remembered one night as they sat watching the stars again. Ryazel spoke softly. Do you ever tell people what really happened? No, Galen replied. Why would I? She looked at him. It's a good story. He smiled. It's our story. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Rajazel reached over and gently held his hand. No crowns, no guards, no orders, just two hands, two lives. One quiet story that had started with a simple act of kindness, and somewhere across the stars, others would write stories filled with war, politics, and battles. But on Idenfor, the best story was this. He helped her without knowing who she was. She returned because he never asked, and together, they found something stronger than power, something simply human.